Hello there, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. Tonight we wander to places where water steps off the edge of land and descends in a kind of slow-motion dance. Waterfalls have a way of calming the mind. The air becomes cooler, the sound becomes steady, and even the light feels softened by mist. They are both movement and stillness, both energy and rest. They shape the landscape without rushing. They carve valleys without violence. They show us that persistence is stronger than force. Before we begin, allow your body to settle. Let your breath fall into an easy rhythm. Let today drift into the background until thoughts feel faint and distant. Imagine a veil of cool mist brushing softly across your face. Imagine the deep, continuous hush of falling water. This is a place the mind recognizes instinctively, a natural lullaby that existed long before language, long before cities, long before memory. Tonight, we will journey through the science, poetry, and gentle mysteries of waterfalls, how they form, how they shape the world, how they soothe the nervous system, and how their presence feels like time slowing down. If you enjoy these calm explorations into the quiet side of nature, I invite you to subscribe and return whenever you wish for rest or curiosity. But for now, sink deeper into stillness. Let the sound of imagined water wash over you and allow the mind to soften. Let's begin. There is something ancient in the way a waterfall moves, as if the water is carrying memory from higher ground into lower valleys. Each droplet has travelled through clouds, through streams, through the thin veins of the earth, and when it finally crosses the lip of stone and commits itself to falling, it is enacting a journey that has been repeated for millions of years. The water does not panic, it does not resist, it simply lets gravity take it, converting quiet potential energy into a soft cascade of motion. Watching it fall, the mind begins to follow the same surrender. Thoughts loosen, tension melts, the internal rhythm of the brain begins to sync with that continuous downward flow, and for a moment, you feel like the waterfall is thinking for you. Some waterfalls are born from melting snow on distant peaks, where seasonal warmth transforms winter's stillness into spring's movement. That water begins as silent crystal locked in frozen form, then gradually finds motion, then joins other threads of liquid, until one day it reaches a cliff or a ledge and tumbles off into open space. If you could follow one molecule of that water, you would witness a quiet odyssey, held as ice, free by thaw, pulled by slope, gathered by rivulets, joined by streams, and finally carried into plunge. This is why waterfalls feel alive. They are not merely falling water, they are the visible story of a journey from sky to stone. At the base of a waterfall, the impact of falling water creates a pool that is constantly stirred, constantly renewed. The droplets merge, break apart, and merge again in an endless exchange that never repeats the same arrangement twice. The surface shimmers with currents that seem like breathing. In that pool, the energy of falling water is softened into circular motion, settling into patterns that mimic relaxation. Look into those ripples and you see motion turning into quiet. You see energy becoming rest. In a way, the waterfall is an alchemist, transforming downward force into tranquil swirling calm. The sound of a waterfall is not random noise. It has a specific acoustic character that masks sharper frequencies and leaves only the broad, soothing waves of sound that the brain interprets as safety. Human beings evolved near natural water sources, and the steady rush of falling water is deeply comforting to the nervous system. It signals abundance, it signals continuity, it signals reliability. Even if you cannot see the waterfall, the sound alone can lull the brain into a relaxed state, lowering heart rate and softening alertness. It is like nature's version of white noise, except alive and organic. As water moves over stone, it carries tiny minerals with it, slowly sculpting the rock beneath. This carving occurs grain by grain, flake by flake, year by year. What looks like a clean vertical cliff today may have taken tens of thousands of years to become smooth. Water is patient. It shapes the earth not by forceful bursts, but by consistent persistence. The stone yields not because the water is strong in a moment, but because it is gentle over time. In this, waterfalls quietly teach a truth that applies to the mind. Transformation is slow. Calm repetition changes everything. In misty conditions around a waterfall, the air becomes filled with microscopic droplets, and these droplets scatter sunlight in a way that makes rainbows possible. Even on days without rain, a halo of colour may appear suspended in the air. These rainbows are not solid objects. They exist only because light, moisture, and perspective align correctly. Walk a few steps and the rainbow may vanish. Step back and it returns. A waterfall can create moments of beauty that exist only for your specific vantage point. It is a reminder that some wonders rely on presence. You must be there to see them. There are waterfalls that run all year, and others that appear only seasonally, fed by rains that come and go. A seasonal waterfall can feel like a secret invisible most of the year, then suddenly alive after storms. This teaches something about potential. The cliff is always there, the path of water is always there, but without flow, nothing reveals itself. Just as in the mind, there are pathways of thought that remain hidden until the right kind of emotional or intellectual rain activates them. Then suddenly new ideas and feelings rush forth, alive and unstoppable. If you stand close to a waterfall, you may feel a faint tingling on your skin from the charged particles in the air. Falling water generates negative ions, tiny electrically charged molecules that can affect mood and energy. These ions increase serotonin levels, enhancing calmness and emotional balance. It's not simply psychological, it is biological. Your body is responding to the chemistry of falling water. This is why breathing near a waterfall often feels easier, deeper, more complete. The air itself becomes soothing. Some waterfalls descend in a single unbroken sheet like a smooth curtain of liquid silk. Others fall in steps, touching rock ledges as they drop. Each touch breaks the water into smaller streams, creating multiple voices in the sound. A stepped waterfall sounds like layers of whispering. A single drop waterfall sounds like continuous hush. The shape of the rock determines the personality of the water, and in the same way, the shape of your experiences determines the music of your thoughts. The waterfall is a mirror of the mind. Over long geological time, waterfalls migrate upstream as they erode the rock at their base. The point where the water falls today is not the same point it fell 1,000 years ago. Slowly, imperceptibly, the cliff recedes. The waterfall journeys backward against the direction of its own flow. There is something poetic in that movement in reverse. Time carving space, history shifting position. Even what seems eternal is quietly changing. In cold regions, some waterfalls turn to ice in winter, forming frozen columns that look like sheets of pale blue glass. What was once movement becomes stillness, and yet even inside the frozen wall there remains a ghost of motion. Tiny air pockets trapped between layers make soft crackling sounds as temperature shifts. The structure becomes layered like ancient crystal. When sunlight passes through it, the light diffuses silently, glowing inside the ice like a lantern. To stand before a frozen waterfall is to witness time paused. It is water holding its breath. And just as the waterfall eventually resumes flowing when warmth returns, it reminds us that periods of stillness in ourselves are not failures. They are moments of quiet gathering, waiting for movement to come again. There are waterfalls so tall that the water evaporates into mist before it reaches the ground. The drop is so long that the water becomes vapor in free fall, dissolving into clouds of drifting haze. From a distance, these waterfalls look like threads of silk dissolving into air. The base of the cliff remains dry even though water is falling above it. The mind has trouble grasping it at first. How can water fall and never arrive? But this is the nature of distances on a planetary scale. What we think is solid and inevitable actually has stages of transformation. The waterfall teaches that even a downward journey can change direction and state. Sometimes we begin as one thing and arrive as another. In dense forests, waterfalls can become hidden behind layers of vegetation. The sound reaches you before the sight. You walk along a path and hear a deep rushing hush long before a break in the trees reveals the water. In that moment, the world feels like a secret unfolding in slow reveal. You do not analyze or calculate, you simply move toward the sound. This is one of the few experiences where hearing becomes a compass. The waterfall calls you forward, and in the same way, the brain has intuitions that draw us forward in life, toward friendships, toward places, toward ideas. We follow the quiet signals before the image becomes clear. Some waterfalls flow over dark volcanic rock, where the texture of the stone makes the water separate into many fine streams. Instead of one curtain of falling water, the drop becomes 1,000 slender threads. In sunlight, each thread catches light individually. The entire waterfall looks like a shimmering harp of liquid strings. Wind shifts the strands in gentle motion, and the water seems to sway like music you can see. The effect is hypnotic and deeply calming. It shows how texture shapes behavior. Even a single surface can create countless paths. In the mind too, one idea can branch into many variations, each one valid, each one moving in its own curve. At the base of some waterfalls, the constant churning of water produces a deep, low-frequency vibration that is more felt than heard. Stand barefoot on nearby rock, and the vibration moves through you as a slow pulse. It is not dramatic, it is steady, it is fundamental. It makes the body feel grounded, stable, anchored to the earth. This sensation resonates with something primal, perhaps a memory encoded in human evolution when being near water meant safety and nourishment. The waterfall becomes not just a sight or a sound, but a physical experience of calm transmitted through stone. Waterfalls can shape climate on a micro scale. The mist around them cools the air, increases humidity, and creates a stable pocket of atmosphere that supports specific plants and animals. Ferns thrive there. Moss thrives. Insects that prefer moisture live in the halo of mist. Even birds learn to use the rising currents of cool air for flight. This creates a miniature ecosystem built entirely around the presence of falling water. Life responds to the waterfall the way thoughts respond to steady breathing. It organizes itself, balances itself, and settles into equilibrium. There are waterfalls that exist underground, hidden in ancient limestone caverns. You do not see them. You feel them in the vibrations of the floor, or hear them echoing softly inside darkness. These hidden waterfalls have been flowing for thousands of years, unseen by human eyes. They carve subterranean chambers, smooth subterranean stone, and create pools that no light touches. They are like the subconscious of the earth, active, moving, powerful, and hidden beneath the surface. The existence of such waterfalls mirrors the human mind. Much of what shapes us happens in places unseen. The waterfall below reminds us the invisible can be the most persistent. Waterfalls often form where harder rock meets softer rock. The softer material erodes faster, creating a sudden drop. This meeting point becomes a threshold between two geologies, and the waterfall marks that border. It is a place of transition, a literal edge. But rather than tearing the rocks apart violently, the waterfall negotiates their difference with constant, gentle motion. Over millennia, the boundary shifts and smooths. This interaction between structure and movement, between resistance and surrender, is what gives each waterfall its unique shape. The lesson echoes into life itself. Differences do not need to clash. They can resolve through patience. Certain waterfalls produce a phenomenon called moonbows, rainbows formed not by sunlight but by moonlight. On clear nights, with enough mist in the air, the full moon can create an arc of faint silver colours above the cascade. Unlike daytime rainbows, moonbows are subtle and ghost-like, often appearing white or pale blue. They feel like something between light and dream. For those who witness it, the memory stays vivid for years, because moonbows require low light, clear air, specific angles, and precise timing. They are reminders that beauty often happens quietly, when the world is calm and still and observing. Ancient cultures often gave waterfalls spiritual significance, treating them as places of purity or gateways between realms. The constant motion of water was seen as a bridge between earth and sky, rain falling down, rivers flowing away, mist rising upward. The waterfall became a meeting point of cycles, ascent and descent, motion and stillness. Some believed that spirits lived in the falling water, others believed that dreams could pass through it. Even today, a waterfall carries an undeniable presence. Stand before one and you feel it, the sense that you are looking at something timeless, something not merely physical, but deeply symbolic. There are waterfalls that meet the ocean where fresh water finally merges with salt water. The river's long journey from mountain snow or inland lakes ends in a soft surrender into the sea. The mixing of fresh and salt water can create swirling layers of different densities, like invisible curtains in the current. These estuary waterfalls exist in a place of transition where the river gives its identity to the ocean and becomes part of something larger. There is a gentle poetry in that surrender, as if every waterfall is performing a final bow before disappearing into the horizon of waves. Watching this, a person can feel their own edges soften, as if individual worries dissolve into something wider and more forgiving. Some waterfalls are so loud that you can feel them long before you hear them clearly. Their sound is not just heard through the ears, but through the body itself, especially through the chest and stomach, where low-frequency vibrations live. It creates a sense of grounding and presence. This vibration invites the mind to stop thinking in sharp, fast patterns. Instead, it nudges awareness down into the body where everything slows and deepens. Many people who sit near a large waterfall report the same sensation. Thoughts become heavy and slow, then simply fade away. The water falls, the rock holds, the air moves, and in that rhythm, consciousness relaxes into something simple and ancient. In regions where mist surrounds a waterfall continuously, tiny droplets settle on rocks, forming a permanent sheen of moisture. This glossy stone surface supports mosses and lichens that thrive in shade and dampness. Over time, the rocks turn green, glowing softly even on cloudy days. When sun does reach them, it is reflected in tiny sparkles across the moss like faint stars in daylight. These plants cling without force, growing patiently in micro increments, expanding across the rock in silent persistence. They teach a gentle lesson that soft growth does not need speed or intensity. It needs constancy, and waterfalls provide it. There are waterfalls that create illusions. In some places, the angle of the sunlight combined with the geometry of the rocks makes the water appear to fall upward, as if streaming into the sky. In other places, a distant waterfall looks frozen, even though it is flowing rapidly, simply because the viewer sees it from too far away to perceive motion. These visual tricks remind us that perception is not absolute. The world we see is shaped by where we stand, how we look, and how aware our senses are. Standing before such a waterfall feels like standing at the intersection of sight and imagination. Waterfalls influence animal behavior in ways that are almost invisible to casual observers. Birds such as swifts nest behind waterfalls, using the constant moisture as protection against predators. Fish will gather at the bases of certain falls, where oxygen levels are higher due to water turbulence. Some animals treat waterfalls as landmarks, returning to them generation after generation. This subtle interaction between life and falling water shows that even the simplest natural phenomenon can become a stabilizing anchor for entire ecosystems. The waterfall is not just scenery, it is a reference point in the memory of living creatures. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world is dim and half awake, waterfalls often sound louder than they do during the day. Without competing noises from wind, insects, or human activity, the sound carries farther and becomes clearer. Listening at this hour can feel like eavesdropping on the planet's breathing. The cascade feels internal rather than external, as if the earth itself is exhaling through water. People who have visited waterfalls at night often describe the same sensation. Their internal monologue goes quiet, their attention expands outward, and they feel briefly connected to something steady and grounding beyond themselves. In places where two waterfalls are near each other, their sounds can interact. One produces a higher rushing tone, another produces a lower thundering vibration. When these blend, the result is a harmonic soundscape that feels almost musical. The brain reacts to this mixture with deep relaxation, because complex natural sounds engage multiple neural pathways at once. This auditory complexity is calming, not stimulating. It fills the mind, leaving no room for intrusive thoughts. In this way, waterfalls compose their own music, one that is never recorded the same way twice. Large waterfalls create wind by forcing falling water through air and displacing it outward. Stand near one, and you will feel gusts that do not come from the sky but from the water itself. Unlike storm wind or cold gales, this airflow is steady and temperate, carrying moisture and freshness. It brushes the face like a soft hand, neither strong nor weak, but consistent. This gentle airflow can shift strands of hair, move leaves on nearby plants, and create motion in the stillness around it. The waterfall creates its own weather, its own breeze, its own microclimate, like a small, breathing world folded inside the larger world. Even the rocks beneath the waterfall carry history. Layers of sediment, trapped fossils, and mineral coloration reveal past climates and ancient seas. A geologist can look at the stone behind the water and read it like a book. Each line and shade tells a story of pressure, heat, erosion, and time. The waterfall does not erase this record, it highlights it. It washes the stone clean each moment, revealing patterns in the rock that were formed long before any human existed. It is humbling to stand beside this and realize that the waterfall is young only a temporary stage, while the stone behind it has been waiting for millions of years. Finally, there are moments when sunlight, wind, flow rate, and air temperature align in such a way that a waterfall looks as though it is flowing in slow motion. The eye catches individual strands of falling water. Droplets seem suspended, floating downward rather than rushing. Time stretches. In that suspended perception, the boundaries between moment and memory blur. The waterfall becomes not an event, but a state of being, a quiet presence that invites the mind to dissolve its rush, its urgency, its noise. The waterfall does not ask anything of you. It simply exists, falling and falling and falling until your mind falls with it into rest. There are waterfalls that are hidden so deeply in the wilderness that only a few people ever see them. They may require travelling through dense forest, crossing streams, or climbing quiet ravines where sunlight filters in narrow beams. The experience of finding them is not like arriving at a tourist waterfall. It feels like discovering something sacred. The sound arrives before the sight. The air becomes cooler, the vegetation changes, and then, in a clearing framed by moss and stone, the waterfall appears unobserved, untouched, flowing whether a human is there or not. Such waterfalls feel like secrets the earth keeps, showing themselves only to those who move slowly enough, quietly enough, patiently enough. Some waterfalls fall into narrow canyons where cliffs compress the sound, creating echoes that bounce between the stone walls. Instead of hearing one waterfall, you hear several overlapping voices of the same water, reflected in different tones and volumes. This turns the simple sound of falling water into a layered experience, as though the canyon itself is participating in the music. Standing there, you can feel the sound move horizontally as well as vertically, wrapping around you like a living acoustic shell. The echoes become a chamber of calming resonance, making the world feel enclosed and safe. There are waterfalls that gently spread across wide rocks rather than dropping vertically. Instead of a dramatic plunge, they form a beautiful downward glide, like a long sheet of silk being pulled over stone. These are often called cascades, and they invite a different kind of attention. You don't focus on one point of motion. Your eyes wander across dozens of threads of water moving together. It is like watching many small thoughts drift through the mind in harmony. Nothing is abrupt. Everything is equal. The motion is smooth and continuous, creating a subtle visual lullaby. Some waterfalls create deep basins where water collects after falling. In these basins, sediments settle, and the water can become exceptionally clear. You can see stones on the bottom with surprising clarity. It feels as though the waterfall has washed the water clean of all cloudiness. People who come here instinctively feel a sense of purity. Even animals treat these pools with a kind of reverence, stepping carefully, drinking slowly. The water carries a freshness that seems to calm the senses. If you dip your hands into it, the coldness travels through your skin and seems to cool the mind itself. Over centuries, waterfalls can carve natural amphitheatres, curved hollows in rock that form perfect circular enclosures. Inside them, sound concentrates and magnifies. Even a small waterfall can feel powerful inside such a space. These hollows act like ancient rooms, places where water and time collaborated to form architecture. The shape invites stillness. You stand inside and feel as though you have stepped into a private chamber of nature, where noise from the outside world cannot intrude. The water falls before you like a curtain, separating you from everything beyond. Some waterfalls never fully dry, but their flow changes dramatically with seasons, shifting from powerful torrents to gentle trickles. The same waterfall can have many personalities throughout the year. In spring it roars with snowmelt. In summer it softens into a delicate veil. In autumn, fallen leaves drift through it. In winter, ice crystals lace its edges. To return to the same waterfall during different seasons is to witness the passage of time expressed through water. It becomes a calendar that doesn't show months or numbers, but movement and mood. There are waterfalls that glow softly in moonlight, reflecting pale silver across the rocks. At night they seem quieter, even if their flow hasn't changed. The world around them is darker, so the waterfall stands out as a vertical ribbon of light. Watching water fall in darkness feels almost dreamlike. It is less visual and more emotional. The sound dominates, the shimmer of water becomes subtle, and your imagination fills in the details. In the hush of night, the waterfall feels like a guardian of silence, falling faithfully while the world sleeps. Some waterfalls produce mist so fine that it collects on eyelashes and skin like a cool breath. This mist can form delicate droplets that cling to hair and clothing without ever turning into full moisture. It feels like being touched by the gentlest version of rain. This sensation relaxes the nervous system, perhaps because it triggers faint memories of childhood experiences, summer sprinklers, foggy mornings, ocean spray. It is nostalgic even if you can't name the memory it evokes. This is one of the subtle ways waterfalls soothe not consciously but emotionally. There are waterfalls that create tiny habitats on the rocks behind them, where plants grow untouched by wind or animals. These microhabitats can host rare ferns, moisture-loving flowers, and even small insects that never travel more than a meter from their birthplace. These miniature ecosystems exist in the shadow of the falling water, protected by the cascade as if behind a curtain of glass. To imagine life flourishing in such a hidden space is to realize how adaptable nature is. It finds opportunities in places where humans might not even think to look. At the very top of a waterfall, before the water begins its descent, there is a moment of near-perfect calm. The surface is smooth, the motion is slow, the water seems almost still as it approaches the edge, and then, only at the final moment, does it surrender to gravity. That tiny boundary, the instant between stillness and falling, contains the entire story of the waterfall. It is the moment of letting go. In that moment, the water has not yet fallen, but can no longer remain. It is poised between what it has been and what it is about to become. The waterfall, like life, is shaped by these moments of transition. Some waterfalls create a steady cloud of suspended moisture that never fully settles and never fully clears. This permanent mist turns the nearby air into something almost textured, something you can feel on your skin like a soft fabric of coolness. In this environment, breathing becomes easier. The lungs feel as if they are receiving purified air. Even thoughts begin to feel lighter. To stand within this mist is to feel gently cleansed. You do not notice when tension leaves. You simply realize at some point that your shoulders have loosened and your breath has deepened. There are times when sunlight passes through the falling water at the perfect angle, making the cascade transparent so you can see the rocks behind it. The waterfall becomes a lens instead of a wall. You're looking through motion instead of looking at it. This gives a strange sensation like seeing through time itself. The falling water becomes a moving curtain of glass. In that moment, you perceive both flow and clarity. Your mind observes motion and stillness together, and somehow this combination brings a deeper quiet than either element alone could offer. Near some waterfalls, tiny streams branch away from the main flow, forming miniature cascades that seem like echoes of the larger one. These small falls may only be a meter in height, but they mirror the same grace of motion. Watching them is like seeing the waterfall speaking in smaller voices. The sound is softer, the descent more delicate, yet the pattern is the same. It shows that beauty replicates itself across scales, from grand to modest. In nature, large and small are not opposites, they are variations. There are waterfalls whose sources lie in underground springs. The water that emerges has been hidden inside rock layers for decades or centuries. It has never seen daylight until it reaches the edge and falls. This water has moved through darkness, silence, and unseen channels. When it finally spills into the open world, it carries a different quality, smoother, clearer, purer. It has been refined by stone and filtered by time. To watch such water fall is to witness something ancient stepping into visibility. Some waterfalls are fed by lakes that sit like mirrors high in mountain basins. The water begins as calm, flat surface reflecting sky and cloud, then travels only a short distance before it drops into space. It is astonishing to think that a gentle, still lake can become a roaring cascade the moment gravity invites it downward. This contrast between quiet lake and active waterfall mirrors the contrast within people. We hold stillness and motion inside us at the same time. We are capable of deep, quiet and powerful movement, depending on the moment. There are places where waterfalls have existed for so long that they have carved deep, cool corridors into the landscape canyon passages, lined with smooth stone. Walking through these canyon trails is like entering a hallway constructed by water. The world grows shadowed, narrow, intimate. Sound becomes focused. Light filters downward in gentle beams. You feel as if you're inside Earth rather than on it. These corridors invite the mind to go inward as well, leaving behind the wide distraction of open space and entering a quieter internal room. Some waterfalls create clouds of spray that coat nearby stones in droplets. When the sun rises after a cold night, these droplets freeze into tiny crystals, covering the rocks in delicate frost. For a few hours that morning, every surface sparkles with icy prisms. The entire scene feels like a moment captured between worlds frozen and moving, cold and flowing. And then, as the sun warms the air, the frost melts and the rocks return to their wet smoothness, as if the sparkle were only a dream. At certain waterfalls, the continuous falling water smooths rocks into perfect curves, removing sharp edges over centuries. This acts like nature's sculpting, shaping stone into rounded forms that look as though they were molded by hand. These curves catch the eye and invite touch. They give the landscape a softness that contradicts its mineral reality. It is humbling to think that something as gentle as water can shape something as solid as rock simply through persistence. The stone does not resist. It yields slowly and gracefully. There are waterfalls where ancient trees grow nearby, leaning slightly toward the source of moisture and sound. Their roots follow water beneath the soil. Their branches seem to reach outward as if listening. These trees have lived beside falling water for centuries. They have grown up with it, season after season, absorbing its rhythm. If trees could dream, it is likely that their dreams would include the constant presence of that falling sound. In their shape and posture, you can almost see a memory of water. When night falls and stars become visible above a waterfall, the contrast between cosmic calm and earthly motion creates a strange harmony. Overhead, the stars sit in their steady positions, barely shifting in the span of human time. Beneath them, water moves continuously, falling every moment, never still. Looking at both together stars above, waterfall below brings a kind of alignment to the mind. It is as if heaven and earth are performing a duet of stillness and flow. The mind, caught between these two motions, finds rest in that balance. Some waterfalls fall over ledges where the rock underneath has been hollowed away, creating a sheltered space behind the curtain of water. Standing in that space, you feel protected by a moving wall of liquid crystal. The outside world becomes muted behind the falling sheets. Light comes through in shifting patterns. Sound becomes softer and even. In that hollow, you feel like you have stepped into a secret room, a chamber of motion that embraces instead of overwhelms. This is one of the calmest places a human can occupy in nature. The water falls and falls, but you remain untouched and safe behind it, as if the waterfall itself is shielding you. Some waterfalls flow across mineral-rich rocks that colour the water in subtle shades of amber, jade or pale blue. These hues are not artificial. They are created by tiny dissolved minerals and sediments suspended in the flow. When sunlight strikes the surface, the waterfall reveals tones that shift and deepen, almost like glass stained by nature rather than art. Watching this shifting palette is deeply soothing because it feels like the water is carrying the memory of the land it passed through. Each colour tells a quiet story of contact with stone, with soil, with ancient earth chemistry that now appears as liquid colour. There are waterfalls that seem to whisper instead of roar, where the sound is gentle and delicate, more like continuous rainfall than thunder. These waterfalls calm the mind in a different way, not by drowning out thoughts with loud noise, but by softly cushioning them. The sound mingles with silence rather than dominating it. Such waterfalls feel contemplative, like a quiet voice speaking in a language of water. You can sit nearby and think, or you can sit and simply listen. Either way, your mind decompresses, loosens, unwinds without effort. Some waterfalls originate from glaciers or permanent snowfields high above ground. The water that reaches the edge may have been frozen for hundreds of years before melting. It is ancient water brought suddenly into the present. To imagine that the water falling beside you was once part of a glacier that formed before your grandparents were born gives the waterfall a sense of continuity across generations. Time feels layered. The moment you are living is just one brief instant in a fluid history stretching far backward. Certain waterfalls are part of long-connected river systems where water passes through a series of drops, pools and terraces. The river flows, falls, regathers itself, flows again. Each waterfall along the course feels like a heartbeat in a long circulatory system. The water remembers every step. It touches every stone. It speaks to gravity in each descent. By the time the river reaches the sea, it has carried with it every echo of every fall. This gives the sense that the waterfall is not isolated. It is part of a long journey, a flowing story. There are waterfalls that only appear for a few hours after heavy storms. They emerge from rock faces that are normally dry, suddenly awakened by intense rainfall. For a brief time, they exist in dramatic flow, then gradually fade and vanish, leaving behind only dark traces on the rock. These ephemeral waterfalls remind us that beauty does not need permanence. Something can be breathtaking and real even if it lasts only a day or a moment. Their presence is like a secret performance that only those in the right place at the right moment will ever witness. Some waterfalls become illuminated by the setting sun in a way that turns the water gold or copper. This warm light travels through the droplets like molten colour. For a moment, the waterfall seems transformed less like water and more like flowing metal. This transformation is not magic, it is physics. But when you witness it in person, it feels emotional rather than scientific. As the light changes and fades, the waterfall returns to its usual clarity, as if stepping quietly out of a golden dream. There are waterfalls with shallow edges where water spreads across wide stone before falling. You can sometimes walk barefoot through the shallow flow, feeling cool water pass across your skin, gentle but confident in its path. This sensation moving water touching the body softly is one of the most primal comforts we know. It connects us to riverbanks and childhood streams, to rain on the skin, to the earliest memories of being alive. The waterfall becomes not just a sight or a sound, but a feeling. Ancient myths, where local cultures have given them names and stories passed down through generations. People have stood before these falls for thousands of years, feeling the same calm, the same awe, the same hush. The waterfall becomes a thread binding past and present. When you stand there now, you join all those who stood before. You become part of the continuity of wonder. You don't have to know the myth to feel the presence that inspired it. And sometimes, after spending time near a waterfall, when you leave and walk back into ordinary quiet air, you still hear it faintly in your mind. The rushing hush echoes in memory, like a gentle imprint that remains for hours or even days. This lingering sensation is evidence of how deeply waterfalls affect the human nervous system. Their rhythm becomes internalized. The brain keeps falling long after the body has walked away, and in that falling inward, sleep comes more easily. There are waterfalls that split into multiple branches as they descend, dividing into separate falls that weave in and out of one another. Each branch finds its own path downward, yet all the water originated from the same stream at the top. Watching this can feel like watching a family tree of motion, one becoming many. It is a quiet demonstration that individual paths can diverge while still sharing a common source. In the mind, this feels like watching ideas grow, a single thought dividing into multiple insights, each one taking its own direction without losing connection to its origin. There are waterfalls that run through soft cavern openings, where the sound echoes with a deep, hollow tone. The water passes through stone gates shaped by erosion and time, and the resulting sound is deeper, almost resonant in a way that vibrates the chest. This feels less like hearing something external and more like remembering something internal. The waterfall becomes a reflection of your own inner resonance, awakening a frequency inside you that is older than language, older than self-awareness. It feels like the body remembering its connection to earth. Some waterfalls become surrounded by fireflies or glowworms during certain seasons, especially in warm, humid regions. The soft falling water becomes framed by tiny lights fluttering in the dark. The waterfall becomes a glowing presence, adorned by nature and tiny floating stars. Standing before such a scene is like being inside a living constellation, water falling like liquid moonlight, insects drifting like silent sparks. It can make the observer feel very small and very safe at the same time. The moment doesn't ask for interpretation or thought, it simply envelopes you. There are waterfalls that create hidden caves behind their flow, but these caves are accessible only at certain times of year or in certain light conditions. To step inside one of these chambers is to step behind the surface of motion. where the outside world is obscured by a moving veil. Inside, the sound becomes softened and even. Light filters through in blurred waves. The sense of enclosure is comforting, like being inside a cocoon made of sound and motion. Here, the waterfall feels not like a spectacle, but like a companion. Some waterfalls descend from great height but land on a rock ledge halfway down, only to fall again. These double or triple stage waterfalls give the sense of rhythm: fall, pause. At each ledge, the water gathers itself. It forms moments of pooling reflection before it continues downward. In watching these, you notice that even the waterfall does not fall all at once. It rests in stages. It regroups. It continues. There is a gentle guidance there, a reminder that long journeys unfold step by step, not in one endless plunge. Certain waterfalls produce mist so thick that nearby surfaces become constantly wet. Trees near the falls become coated in moisture. Their bark darkens to deep chocolate tones. Leaves shine with liquid green. Stones glimmer with polished smoothness. Everything takes on an understated glow. This level of moisture supports specific mosses and fungi that cannot live in dryness. A small forest of microlife thrives only because the waterfall breathes moisture into the air. In this, the waterfall becomes not just a piece of scenery, but an engine of life. There are waterfalls that have been flowing long enough to outlive human lifetimes many times over. People come and go, generations pass, but the waterfall remains ever present, ever falling. It becomes an anchor of continuity. When you stand before such a waterfall, you know you're looking at something that was falling long before your birth and will be falling long after your death. This creates a strangely comforting feeling. Time becomes expansive, not constrictive. You realize your worries are temporary, but this sound, this motion, this natural rhythm will continue. Some waterfalls merge with fog or low clouds so that they appear to vanish into whiteness. The boundary between water and air dissolves. The falling water disappears into mist before reaching view. In these conditions, the waterfall becomes abstract, more suggestion than shape. It may feel like an apparition, more sense than seen. This invites a different kind of awareness. Instead of watching motion, you feel presence. The waterfall becomes something you experience through intuition rather than sight. At some waterfalls, rain brings a dramatic transformation. A thin, quiet trickle can become roaring thunder within hours. The world changes visibly in response to rainfall. The waterfall expands, deepens, fills. The pool below churns with new energy. You can see life in the water itself responding to the force of replenishment. It is a reminder of how quickly nature can shift in mood from whisper to roar, from hush to flood. And yet both states are natural. Both are authentic expressions of the same source. There are waterfalls whose spray rises upward when wind blows against the falling water. The cascade seems to resist gravity, blown backward into rippling, upward-flowing sheets. Watching this feels surreal, as if water has briefly forgotten its destiny to fall downward. For a moment, water seems to float or hover. This defiance of gravity is temporary, but mesmerizing. It reminds the mind that even familiar laws of nature can be bent under the right conditions, that the world contains small miracles available to patient eyes. Some waterfalls create their own pathways through stone, not by forceful chiseling, but by gentle repetition. The water finds the smallest weakness, the tiniest crack, and returns to it over and over, year after year. Slowly the crack widens, the rock yields, the path expands. Watching this teaches something profound. Great change does not always require dramatic action. Gentle persistence can carve canyons. Quiet motion can reshape mountains. In the same way, small consistent habits shape the inner landscape of the mind over long periods of time. There are waterfalls where leaves drift down from forest overhangs and land on the surface of the falling water. For a moment, the leaves rest on liquid turbulence, neither falling nor floating. Then they glide downward, caught in eddies and spirals, until they settle in the pool below. Watching this motion leaves moving through a vertical highway of water is strangely calming. The leaf does not resist. It does not choose direction. It simply surrenders to the flow. There is peace in that surrender. It shows that not everything needs control or effort. Some waterfalls sit so deep inside valleys that sunlight touches them only for brief windows of the day. In these moments, light reaches the cascading water and turns it dazzling white, but only for a short time. The waterfall becomes a bright river of descent, glowing as if lit from within. And then, as the sun moves, the glow fades, and the falls return to shadow. This creates a rhythm of illumination and dimness, like a breath cycle of light. The waterfall exists in its own schedule of brightness, independent of human observation. There are waterfalls that create a constant spray onto the nearby rocks, forming slick surfaces that shimmer like polished marble. These wet stones catch tiny reflections of sky and forest. When looking closely, you see small droplets sliding across them, leaving momentary trails. These droplets behave like living beads of transparency, moving with intention even though they are driven only by surface tension and gravity. Observing them grounds you in simple processes. Movement becomes minimal. Attention becomes small and quiet. Time slows. Certain waterfalls form on volcanic islands where rainwater travels through porous basalt before emerging at the cliff edge. This water is naturally filtered pure enough to drink directly. Islanders historically collected waterfall water for ceremonies or rituals. To drink from such a stream is to absorb the island's deep geology into the body minerals from ancient lava, moisture from tropical air, purity from stone. It creates a union between human and landscape, between internal and external environments. It is hydration not just of body but of belonging. Some waterfalls conceal stories about the land's past. Fossilized shells embedded in nearby rock may indicate that the region was once underwater. Lithified sand layers may reveal ancient desert. Smooth pebbles may suggest past riverbeds long changed. The waterfall is not simply falling in the present moment, it is also falling across layers of history. When water slides over these ancient surfaces, it connects modern time to ancient epochs. The sound you hear is contemporary. The stone it touches is prehistoric. This layering of time feels like standing at a crossroad of eras. There are waterfalls that fall onto piles of loose stone rather than into pools. Instead of splashing into a basin of water, the falling stream breaks against jumbled rocks, sending droplets in all directions. This creates a lively texture of motion, a dance of tiny impacts. Watching this is like watching sparks from a fire, except made of water. The movements are unpredictable but harmonious. It evokes curiosity and stillness at once, a reminder that nature often finds beauty in irregularity. Some waterfalls inspire people to wait in silence rather than speak. Even visitors who arrive chatting often grow quiet in the presence of falling water. Words seem unnecessary. Thought itself seems to soften. In this space, communication happens through shared silence, a collective stillness that honors the motion in front of them. The waterfall becomes a teacher of quiet, showing that calm does not require explanation. It simply exists, and the body responds by slowing down. There are waterfalls where fallen logs become resting platforms for animals. Birds perch on them, otters lounge there, insects explore their surfaces. These logs, carried by previous floods or natural decay, become islands of life within the moving water. They transform the waterfall's base into a living haven. This demonstrates how even within constant motion stable places can exist. The waterfall is fluid, but life finds balance in the spaces created by that flow. And there are waterfalls that have dried up permanently due to climate changes or shifts in water sources. These dry cliffs show scars of former flow, smooth channels where water once ran. Though silent now, the stone remembers. It carries the shape of water long gone. Standing before such a dry waterfall evokes a quiet melancholy, yet even here there is meaning. It reminds us that nature changes, landscapes evolve, and absence can hold its own kind of presence, a memory of motion. Some waterfalls are fed by snowmelt so pure that when the water first falls, it carries almost no sediment or organic matter. It looks even clearer than normal water, almost invisible except for the shimmer of its motion. You see it only because it bends light, not because it reflects it. Watching such a waterfall is like watching motion without substance, like seeing time flow in liquid form. It gives the sense that the water is not something separate from air, but simply a different expression of its movement made visible. There are waterfalls that form natural staircases of stone, where each step holds a shallow pool before the water moves on. The water pauses very briefly in each stone cradle, almost as if catching its breath. These terraces create a beautiful rhythm of stop and release. The mind feels that rhythm instinctively. It recognizes a pattern of effort and rests a reminder that all flowing things, even water, benefit from moments of pause. Watching it can bring peace to a restless heart, because it feels like life also moves in stages of accumulation and release. Some waterfalls are accompanied by birdsong warblers, thrushes, or even ravens that nest nearby. Their voices blend with the waterfall's hush, creating a duet of sound. The birds add melody while the water provides harmony. The two together feel like a conversation between air and earth, between feather and fluid. Listening to this natural music, you feel the presence of multiple living worlds coexisting. Motion of water, breath of birds, quiet watch of stone. It creates a layered calm that sinks deeper with each moment. There are waterfalls, where the spray nourishes miniature forests of delicate fungi and tiny plants, barely visible unless you lean close. The rocks host entire micro-universes, small moss stalks, microscopic ferns, translucent growths shaped like tiny cups. These worlds exist at a scale that human attention rarely visits, yet life thrives there in rich diversity. Seeing this evokes a humbling realization. Even in places overlooked by large creatures, nature expresses beauty and persistence. The waterfall supports not just grand scenery, but secret gardens of miniature life. Some waterfalls have a way of creating steady emotional grounding, even for people who arrive anxious or troubled. The sound gradually dulls the harsh edges of thought. The rhythm quiets mental chatter. The presence of a continuous falling motion gives the nervous system something predictable to anchor to. Researchers have found that water sounds reduce cortical stress and increase alpha wave activity in the brain, the same state present in meditation and near sleep. The waterfall becomes a kind of natural therapist, not through dialogue, but through presence. There are waterfalls in narrow mountain passes where cold air is trapped and continuously chilled by evaporating mist. Standing near them feels like standing next to an unseen refrigerator of nature. The cold is fresh, clean, penetrating, almost medicinal. This crispness clears the senses and sharpens awareness. But in a sleepy context, that same purity can bring a different sensation, a clarity of quiet, a deeper inhalation, a sense that the body is tuning itself to a more peaceful frequency as the mind slowly drifts towards stillness. Some waterfalls appear differently at different distances. Up close, they are thunder in texture. From far away, they are a thin silver ribbon against stone. Distance transforms them from storm to whisper. This teaches something gentle about perspective. Intensity depends on proximity. When we step back physically, things soften. When we step back emotionally, thoughts soften. The waterfall demonstrates this visually. Your viewpoint changes the experience. Sometimes stepping back allows more peace. There are waterfalls that glow golden in the morning, white at midday, and amber in the evening, even though the water itself hasn't changed. The colour is simply sunlight refracted at different angles. This gives the waterfall a shifting personality throughout the day, from youthful brightness to mature warmth to sleepy glow. Watching the waterfall at dusk when shadows lengthen and the water becomes deep copper brings a feeling of closure, of settling, as if the waterfall is also preparing to sleep. Some waterfalls create swirling wish pools where people have traditionally tossed coins or tokens, offering silent wishes to the water. Even if no one believes in magic literally, the act of releasing a coin into deep water has symbolic weight. You surrender a tiny piece of metal, but metaphorically you are surrendering a thought, a hope, a memory. The waterfall carries it away. The ritual lets the heart loosen its grip, even if just for a moment, giving the mind permission to rest. And in some waterfalls at certain hours of dusk, insects skim across the water's surface, moving with small ripples that catch the fading light. Their movements create patterns like living calligraphy. The waterfall's energy disperses through these tiny ripples. It feels like nature writing its own secret script across the pool. You watch, not to interpret, but to simply witness. In that witnessing, the world feels softer, quieter, and more accepting, as if it is gently inviting you to sleep. Some waterfalls create standing waves where water hits submerged rocks and forms rhythmic upward swells that never collapse. These bulges of water look like small hills moving in place, even though their shape is held steady by invisible pressure. Watching them feels like witnessing water balancing itself. Nothing crashes, nothing breaks. The water performs a slow ritual of motion held within boundaries. This creates a strange comfort. You know the wave will rise, you know it will hold, you know it will dissolve. The mind loves this predictability. It releases tension into that certainty. There are waterfalls where mist settles onto fallen logs and dormant soil, making the ground softly damp and fragrant. The scent of wet earth carries subtle minerals and organic notes that can trigger calm memories buried so deeply within the subconscious that you're not consciously aware of them. This aroma has a grounding effect. It reminds the body that it is part of nature rather than separate from it. Breathing this air draws attention away from mental abstraction and returns awareness to the physical body present, breathing, living. Some waterfalls run over limestone or rock rich in calcium, and as droplets evaporate, thin mineral deposits form. Over decades, these deposits build delicate formations draping stone curtains, smooth fans, elegant ridges. The waterfall becomes both sculptor and painter, building permanent artworks from liquid motion. These formations are like frozen memories of water, capturing shapes that are normally fleeting. You stand before these mineral sculptures and feel time deepen, not measured in hours or days, but in stone thickness and glacial patience. There are waterfalls where winter transforms each droplet into a tiny bead of ice before it reaches the pool below. These beads glide softly, producing gentle tinkling sounds like a faint crystalline rain. The waterfall becomes a choir of tiny ice chimes. Listening to this delicate sound is almost hypnotic. It bypasses analytical thought and resonates directly with sensation. The waterfall, normally strong and rushing, becomes fragile and musical. It reveals that even powerful forces can have soft voices. Some waterfalls seem to pull attention downward, guiding the gaze into the pool, the ripples, the softly swirling patterns. Others do the opposite. Your eyes are drawn upward to where the water begins, to the ledge where its descent starts. This duality, downward focus versus upward focus, reflects the dual nature of contemplation. Some thoughts lead inward, to calm and grounding, while others lift upward, toward imagination and wonder. The waterfall supports both movements, grounding and uplifting. There are waterfalls whose spray causes crystals of light to break the sunlight into prismatic fragments. Even though the mist is nearly invisible, it bends light into tiny colour glints that feel like sparks of living colour dancing in midair. These sparks are not solid things, they exist only in the alignment of water, light and perspective. This kind of transient beauty teaches the mind to appreciate moments that cannot be held. You witness them, you breathe them in, and you let them go. Some waterfalls carry the history of sounds, the echo of water that has been falling there for hundreds or thousands of years. People who sleep near such waterfalls describe how the sound weaves itself into their dreams, becoming part of the brain's internal nightscape. The waterfall becomes a dream machine. Each layer of sound enters deeper auditory regions of the mind, scaffolding sleep. The water outside becomes inner water, flowing through thought as gently as it flows over rock. There are waterfalls that humans reach only by long journey. Hours of hiking, miles of quiet steps, winding trails that require effort and patience. Arriving at such a waterfall brings a special kind of peace. The tranquility feels earned. Your breathing is deeper, your thoughts quieter, your awareness expanded, not because the waterfall forced that calm, but because the human body surrendered to stillness on the way there. The waterfall becomes a destination of quiet, both external and internal. At the bottom of some waterfalls, a fine cloud of droplets hangs so steadily in the air that sunlight becomes diffused into a gentle silver glow. The whole space feels softly lit, neither bright nor dark, but perfectly balanced. The light has no edge or glare. It exists as atmosphere more than illumination. This makes time feel distant, like hours are slipping by without urgency. The waterfall becomes an environment where clocks become irrelevant. And finally, there are waterfalls whose existence is so simple and steady that they feel like heartbeat or breath. You witness their falling and realize they are practicing the simplest motion release. They let go of water, moment after moment, uncounted, unending. There is no ambition in a waterfall. No hesitation, no anxiety, only the acceptance of falling. This acceptance is contagious. The mind begins to let go in the same way, becoming softer, lighter, quieter. In that quietness, sleep arrives naturally, like water flowing towards stillness. There are waterfalls that humans cannot safely approach, surrounded by cliffs or thick vegetation, yet from a distance they can still be felt. The sound reaches you across valleys. The mist drifts on the wind. The presence of the waterfall seems to extend beyond its physical boundaries. It becomes something subtle and pervasive. Even without touching it, even without standing beneath it, you feel its calming influence. It teaches that closeness is not always necessary for a connection to exist. Some relationships, even with nature, are felt from afar. In some places, waterfalls create deep natural resonances that travel through the ground. These vibrations can be faintly sensed through the feet and legs, like a subtle pulse from the earth itself. It feels almost like the planet's heartbeat, steady and ancient. This sensation grounds the nervous system and draws awareness downward from the mind into the body. It is an invitation to inhabit your own physical presence more fully, to feel weight, to feel warmth, to feel the quiet miracle of being embodied. There are waterfalls where dust motes, pollen, and microscopic life drift through the air surrounding them, all suspended in a fine, shifting atmosphere of moisture. These tiny particles catch the light in soft halos, creating a luminous haze around the falls. What you're seeing is not just water and stone, but countless tiny histories, spores, fragments of leaves, mineral grains, bits of cloud. Water becomes the carrier of all these threads, weaving them through air and into light. It is a gentle reminder of the interconnectedness of everything. Some waterfalls form shallow gradients where the rushing water is thin, allowing light to reach through to stones beneath the surface, turning them into immersive amber windows. When you look through them, it feels like gazing into wells of liquid sunlight. The stones seem to glow from within. The world underneath the water feels soft, golden, heavy with warmth. Your eyes rest there, drawn not to motion but to the calm ground beneath it, a stillness inside movement. There are waterfalls that exist where tectonic plates meet places where the earth slowly shifts beneath its own skin. The water traces these fault lines, exposing the quiet drama of geology. When you stand near such a waterfall, You're standing on a seam of the earth, a place where continents meet, where mountains rise, where valleys sink. The waterfall becomes not just a hydrological event, but a geological witness. It is water's signature written on the shape of the planet. In some cultures, waterfalls have long been seen as places where wishes are more likely to be heard, perhaps because falling water feels like a messenger, carrying intention into motion. People whisper hopes into the roar. They release thoughts into the spray. They imagine their wishes folded into droplets that drift into rivers, then oceans, then sky. Even if one does not believe in mystical exchange, the act of releasing a wish into falling water feels therapeutic. It allows the mind to unburden itself gently. Some waterfalls create unique winds that flow outward from the falling water, then upward, then back toward the falls in a subtle circular pattern. This microcirculation of air creates a tiny breathing system around the waterfall. Leaves respond, insects ride upon it. Small birds use it to hover effortlessly. You can stand in this current and feel the air swirl around your body in a pattern that repeats like a slow dance. It is nature's soft choreography, unseen but felt. There are waterfalls that have been witnessed by thousands of different generations of living creatures: deer, birds, people, insects, even ancient tribes long vanished. You're just the most recent pair of eyes to stand there. You feel a continuity of presence, an unspoken connection to all who have ever paused in front of that same falling water. The waterfall acts as a bridge across time. It remembers everyone yet tells no stories. Its memory is motion. Some waterfalls only reveal their full shape after heavy rain, when smaller streams spring to life and join the main flow. The waterfall becomes a multi-layered fan, spreading broadly over the rock in an intricate pattern. This blooming of water feels like the landscape awakening. It is a reminder that nature has hidden versions of itself that reveal only under certain conditions. The world is full of latent beauty just waiting for the right moment to appear. And some waterfalls, when all else is quiet and the air is still, seem to speak directly to the human mind, not in words, but in a feeling and invitation to surrender. You realize that the water does not resist falling. It does not fear the drop. It does not cling to the height. It simply lets go and trusts gravity. Standing before that, something in you softens. You feel the possibility of letting go, too, of thoughts, of worries, of tension. The waterfall becomes a model for release. And slowly, gently, the mind begins to fall into stillness. There are waterfalls where the surrounding plants seem to grow more vivid in colour than anywhere else, as though constant moisture and diffused light have painted the leaves with deeper greens and richer tones. Ferns unfurl near the base, moss thickens on the rocks, vines hang like softened ropes, and every surface seems alive with quiet flourishing. This lushness creates a feeling of gentle abundance where life has nothing to fight against. It grows because it is supported. Standing in such a place, your mind senses that softness, not survival through struggle, but through nourishment. The waterfall becomes a giver, not a taker. Some waterfalls change character through the seasons. In spring, they rush with snowmelt and youthful power. In summer, they thin and become almost whisper-like. In autumn, fallen leaves paint their edges with warm colour. In winter, ice reshapes them into sculptural forms. The waterfall becomes a living calendar, not measured by numbers, but by textures, sounds, and density of flow. It shows that time is not something abstract. Time is something the earth wears like clothing, changing it slowly and beautifully. There are waterfalls that never make a crashing roar, but instead emit a soft, continuous hush, a sound more like fingers brushing fabric than thunder. This gentler soundscape wraps around the listener like a blanket of white noise. The human brain responds instinctively to the softness, slipping into rhythms associated with sleep and deep rest. In this hush, thoughts drift rather than argue. The sound invites surrender rather than attention. Some waterfalls form in hidden caves or behind rock curtains, so that you must pass through stone or shadow to find them. The moment you emerge into their presence, there is a sudden change in atmosphere, cooler air, dimmer light, the amplified echo of enclosed water. These secret waterfalls feel like discoveries, like walking into a chamber that water has kept private. You feel welcomed into a space that has existed quietly for ages, waiting for visitors who enter with quiet steps and reverence. At certain angles, the mist from waterfalls catches low sunlight and forms brief halos, circular glows that seem to float in midair. These halos feel like something sacred, something ephemeral. You could stand there for hours waiting for them to reappear. When they do, they feel like little answers from nature, proof that beauty often requires timing, patience, and presence. The halo appears only when light, water, and viewer stand in perfect alignment. There are waterfalls where bathing birds gather in the shallow splash pools beneath the falls. They flutter through the mist, dip in the basin, and shake droplets from their wings in quick, gentle bursts. Watching these tiny creatures interact playfully with such a grand landscape reminds you that nature exists on every scale, from the rushing column of water to the trembling feather on a sparrow's back. The waterfall carries both majesty and tenderness simultaneously. Some waterfalls flow over dark volcanic rock that absorbs heat from sunlight. The warmed stone creates gentle updrafts of air, forming subtle thermal currents that insects and birds follow. This invisible motion feels like the breath of the landscape itself, a warm exhale rising from stone. You become aware that waterfalls are surrounded by microclimates, little worlds of temperature and motion that exist only in their presence. There are waterfalls where the surrounding silence between water pulses becomes just as meaningful as the water itself. The flow may be rhythmic, loud, then quiet, then loud, as if the waterfall is speaking in a language of cadence. These intervals of near quiet allow the mind to reset, to rest between waves of sound. Listening becomes a meditative cycle. Attention, release, attention, release. Some waterfalls sink into porous stone, disappearing underground almost as quickly as they fall. The water doesn't pool or spread, it is absorbed like a memory into earth. You can see it vanish, but not where it travels next. These waterfalls carry a sense of secrecy, water entering unseen caverns, feeding hidden aquifers beneath the surface. There is something soothing in knowing that life continues invisibly, that nourishment travels where eyes cannot follow. And there are waterfalls that do nothing extraordinary except exist, persistently and peacefully. They fall day after day, year after year, without agenda or urgency. Their purpose is simply to continue. When a human stands by such a waterfall, something in the nervous system recognizes that constancy. It understands that not everything requires effort. Some things simply flow. That understanding softens the mind and quiets the breath. It teaches the body a slower rhythm, the rhythm of surrender. There are waterfalls that create tiny swirling eddies near their base, slow, circular motions where leaves, petals, or small bits of bark spin endlessly in place. These little whirlpools are like meditative wheels, turning calmly even beside the rush of falling water. They represent the idea that calm can exist even at the edge of momentum. The large flow is dramatic, but in these quiet pockets, movement is slower, thoughtful, almost contemplative. The water remembers stillness even while it falls. Some waterfalls produce a faint scent of minerals, iron, copper, silica mixed with the aroma of damp plants and clean water. This mineral fragrance is subtle but grounding. It invites deep breathing and sensory relaxation. Inhaling this air feels like inhaling the memory of stone, forest, and sky. It is the earth speaking through scent rather than words, a soft reminder of origin and continuity. The body seems to recognize it instinctively. There are waterfalls whose droplets disperse so evenly that mist covers the skin like a veil of tiny kisses. Each drop is too small to feel individually, yet the sensation of their collective presence is gentle and enveloping. It is as though you are not merely standing near the waterfall, but inside its breath. The skin responds with a quiet shiver of awareness. This tactile whisper calms the nervous system, allowing the body to feel held and soothed. Some waterfalls originate from melting snow and glacial ice, meaning the water has been frozen for centuries or millennia before its release. When that water finally falls, it carries the memory of ancient winters. Standing near such a waterfall feels like standing beside bottled time water that slept in solid form for ages, now awakened into motion. This awareness stretches the imagination far beyond human lifetimes. It opens a door to deep time where patience is measured in eras. There are waterfalls that sing through rock rather than air. Deep behind the visible water, where streams flow through cracks and hidden channels, vibrations move through stone rather than space. If you place your hand on certain rocks, you feel a dormant hum softer than sound, deeper than hearing. It feels like the earth is purring. This type of contact bypasses the ears and speaks directly to the body. It is conversation through vibration. Some waterfalls are surrounded by stones smooth enough to sit upon, perfectly shaped by centuries of water polishing. These stones become natural seats benches carved by time and flow. When you sit on them, your body sinks slightly into their curves, and you feel the serenity of rock that has been shaped by patience. It is a reminder that softness can shape hardness given enough time. Gentle repetition becomes force. There are waterfalls that appear simple from afar, just a white line against rock, but reveal extraordinary detail up close. Fine streams weave through microchannels. Tiny secondary falls branch off. Droplets form rhythmic beading on surfaces. What looked uniform from a distance becomes intricate at arm's length, like lace woven by water. It reminds the viewer that simplicity often hides complexity and that quiet things contain multitudes. Some waterfalls generate a small downward breeze where the falling water pushes air into the basin below. This movement creates a soft downward wind that brushes the face and hair. The sensation is oddly comforting, like being stroked by the air itself. It gives the feeling of receiving attention from the environment, as if the waterfall itself is acknowledging your presence, gently cooling and calming you. There are waterfalls that glow softly at night, not from light in the water, but from the luminous insects, pale algae, or distant moonlight reflecting on slow-drifting mist. In that darkness, the waterfall becomes a ghost of movement not seen clearly, but sensed. Its presence becomes felt by ear, by skin, by atmosphere. It exists like a gentle presence in a dream. Without needing clear vision, the mind paints it in softer strokes. And there are waterfalls that humans pass by without noticing, small trickling flows hidden beneath roots, behind ferns, under fallen logs. These micro-waterfalls play no dramatic role. They do not roar or surge, they simply drip and thread their way through soil and moss. Yet these tiny flows feed roots, raise humidity, nurture insects, cool the earth. Their significance is quiet, their contribution is subtle. They remind us that even the smallest acts of nourishment can sustain life. As our journey beside these quiet waters draws to its end, let the feeling of falling water linger in your mind. Waterfalls do not force their way forward. They do not question the descent. They simply allow themselves to fall, and in that surrender they find their natural path. If there is something you have carried in your thoughts today, something that has clung to you even into the night, you do not have to wrestle with it now. Let it be like a drop released into flow. Let it settle into calm at its own pace. You have walked tonight not through forests or cities, but through sensation. You have listened to the rhythm of nature's breathing, felt the gentleness of mist and motion, and allowed your mind to rest in quiet observation. That stillness remains now. The body grows heavy, the eyes grow soft, breath becomes slow and natural. Sleep does not need to be chased, it comes on its own like a river finding its basin. Thank you for spending these quiet moments with the Sleepy Scientist. If these gentle explorations bring you peace, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and join this small, growing community of calm listeners. Every new voice becomes part of the quiet, and together we create a space where rest is welcome. Now, let the sound of inner water deepen, let thought fade, and let sleep rise to meet you. May your night be soft, may your dreams drift gently, and may you wake with ease on the shore of a peaceful morning. Good night.